Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's meeting of the Ridgecrest City Council. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order here at 5 p.m. We'll begin with a roll call.
Mayor Bruin,
Here.
Mr. Rajaratnam,
Here.
Mr. Gorman.
Here.
We have 3 present, 2 on their way, but we do have a quorum to start.
Okay. Next item is our approval of our agenda. Martin, I believe there's one small change on the agenda.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, honorable council members. The second public hearing that was originally scheduled for this meeting on the business district
RTID.
RTID will be actually continued and noticed for September 20th meeting. So it will not be on today's agenda.
September 20th. Just want to make
Correct.
sure that we're clear.
And we'll make that announcement again when we start the meeting, because there'll probably be more people in the audience, just in case somebody's waiting for that item.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. Beyond that, do I have a motion for approval of the agenda as presented?
So moved.
I need a second.
A second.
Second. Are we using the devices or are we using
We
roll call?
are. Please vote. Here, it's right in front of you, Solomon. There you go. You have to be patient. Skip's learning. There you
comes.
go.
Oh, you have to push
Oh, they didn't show up, Riley.
Yeah, 3 of 5's there.
Okay, before they said yes or no, and we're red or green and whatnot, so how do we know what they voted?
There you go.
Okay, we have 3 yeses with Kyle and Scott being absent at this point, but Kyle is walking in
Mr.
now.
Blades is walking in
So it
now.
does pass.
Okay. And then I'll go, is there any public comment on any of the closed session items? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and adjourn into closed session. We have 3 items to discuss. First, conference with legal counsel for potential litigation under Government Code 54959.9. And then conference with legal counsel for existing litigation in Todd versus Dilda and the City of Ridgecrest, Kern County Superior Court, BCV 23-101-356. And then conference with legal counsel, potential litigation for 1 case. We'll be returning to our regular session at 6 p.m. and we'll see you then. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go ahead and call our meeting back to order. If I can ask everyone to begin our regular session by joining me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Travis, you get the honor since Captain's in the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilman Rajaratnam.
Please join me in prayer if you would. Lord, thank you for giving us this day. Lord, thank you for the freedom which you have given to us, Lord. I ask you to give wisdom to our leadership at the country level, Lord, at the state level, as well as county and city council levels, Lord. Lord, thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve on this council. Lord, fill us with your wisdom, with your direction as we discuss many matters, and let our decisions be beneficial to this community, Lord. Bless each one of us who are here. In Jesus' precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, our first item this evening is our attorney's report out of closed session.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council Member. For the record, all 5 council members were present for all items discussed in the closed session. The only 2 reportable actions were on the McCormick and Watkins claims, and the council unanimously directed staff to deny those claims.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. We have one presentation today. If I can go ahead and ask Mr. Strand to introduce our guest.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council.
Or is Megan introducing?
I'll have Megan introduce him.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was Megan. Sorry, it said Strand, but then I thought Megan was doing.
Yes, as promised by staff, we're bringing Placer AI back with one of the representatives to be able to briefly describe the Placer AI software, as well as give council the ability to ask any pertinent questions. Megan, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think City Manager Strang summed it up pretty well. I'm just going to introduce Chris Duval, who's our Placer rep. Anybody who's been to the Economic Development Committees should be aware we've talked to this, and anybody who's attended the ICSC, I know Councilman Blades, as well as Planning Commissioner Ferris, as well as City Manager Strand, has been able to see these demos a few different times. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Chris, but I'll stay up here if there's any questions for me specifically.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Megan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just
Yes,
fine.
sir.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Chris Duval. I'm not a council member. I am our account rep here at Placer. Today I'll be giving a quick presentation about Placer, going through a bit about our software, what we do, and our privacy practices and more. So can you see my deck labeled the presentation today?
Yes, sir, we can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So on the call today, I have joining me here is my colleague Ian Ross. He is our head of Civic. My director, Jeremy, he was not able to join today, but this is our presenting team for today. Our agenda for what we're going to present today is we're going to first start off with a little introduction about Placer, who we are, what we do, how we get our data, how our other civic organizations, specifically cities, utilizing Placer, as well as jump into our privacy practices. Then we'll jump into a quick demonstration of the software, looking at a specific use case around the Ridgecrest Down Center. And then I'll leave some time at the end to discuss a little bit about the subscription to Placer, what it will look like, as well as also have an open floor discussion with any questions from the council. All right, so let's jump into a little bit about Placer. So who are we? We are a location analytics company. And what that means is we are leveraging mobile location to provide you with market intelligence into any physical place in the United States. And the way that we're doing this is we are harnessing mobile location data and anonymously aggregating that data to learn more about any place. We are a young company. We've been selling our product now for about 5.5, 6 years. We have over 2,700 different customers in over 30 different industries. And we work with a lot of the big name brands that you can think of today, like the Whole Foods, the TJ Maxx's, as well as 9 out of the top 10 commercial real estate brokers in the country and more. When it comes down to civic organizations, we have over 550 different civic organizations that we work with across the country. And what that looks like is that's ranging from cities, counties, business improvement districts, economic development organizations, and even nearby, some of the big name customers that we work with are like Denver, Seattle, Fort Worth, as well as also nearby customers like I'm totally going to butcher this, but Tehachapi, Lancaster, Clovis, Shafter, some customers in California that also utilize our data. When it comes down to how civic organizations are generally utilizing our data, there's a broad range of different organization types, as well as also use cases for our data. The bread and butter we were founded out of commercial real estate. So retail recruitment is definitely one of the main drivers of our platform. Event analysis is also a really powerful use case for Placer, where we're able to tell you how many people came to an event, where they went before and after, and more, as well as a ton of other use cases here on this list. I've included some specific use cases that have been seen before in the past in terms of like cities actually being able to recruit specific retailers by using different tools like our gap analysis, leakage assessments that you could run utilizing our platform. Even different abilities to understand like the effectiveness of an event. This use case here is about a downtown organization in Austin that was able to understand how many people came to a public event, whether it was unticketed. And that's where Placer really thrives in giving you information about how many people came, where they came from, and more. As well as also being able to optimize for specific events as well, in terms of understanding your audience type and then being able to understand how to market and impact and draw more traffic and more boost turnout to specific locations. When it comes down to Placer, our data, what our data is we are capturing location data from about 25 million mobile devices, 24/7, 365. We spent 3.5 years prior to selling, developing our algorithms as well as developing our panel for our data. We claim very high accuracy rates where we get tested by the big box retailers on a daily basis, where we find ourselves about 93 to 97% accurate when comparing against big box retail. As you can see on this list, we see Best Buy, Target, and where they actually back test and test against their ground truth data. When it comes down to how our panel is developed, as well as also the data that we're capturing, we source our data through what's known as an SDK, or a piece of code that's written into different mobile applications, allowing us to monitor the location of a device, and that's it. We are CCPA and GDPR compliant, meaning we are regulatory compliant with a lot of the major compliancy around data protection across the country. What our data is we are downloaded to be included in our panel. You have to have one of our devices downloaded in the background, and the user also needs to be sharing location data with that device 24/7. So it's actually double authentication, double opt-in service to be included into our panel. The types of apps that we work with, the actual apps that we partner with are under strict NDA, but in the top corner here, you can see the different types of apps that we work with, which include shopping apps, family apps, travel apps. And what's also a thing to be noted about our apps that we work with is that location is essential for the application. When it comes down to privacy, we never touch personal information. We never have, never will. So we don't collect anything like phone numbers, email addresses, names of the device. So we actually won't be able to tell you whose device it is. We never have done that, never will do that. We don't have any MAIDS codes, which is really the industry code for that. And we also never will share user level data. Any report that you'll see on our platform, the closest thing you'll see to any type of point is a representative of at least 50 different visits to a specific location. We also have heavily invested in data security, and we are compliant with a lot of the highest in security management systems out there. When it comes also down to our marketplace, all the data sets that we'll see in terms of demographics, as well as also psychographic data sets, those are coming from third-party data sets, which are basically overlays on top of census block groups. And this will make more sense when I actually jump into the platform here in a second. So with that being said, I'm going to take you through a quick demo of our software here. And what I've done is I've actually pulled up the Ridgecrest Town Center in the background here to show you how you can utilize our platform here. So this is our overview page where we can analyze any location, any property in the United States. And what we can do within a report is we can actually look up to 8 different locations at one time. Today, we'll just focus on this specific site. In the future too, you can request polygons to be drawn or different sites you want to analyze. The date range we'll look at is the last 12 months. Our data goes back to January 1st of 2017, as well as we have data loading in near real time as of 3 to 4 days ago. Every day you will log onto the platform, there will be new days worth of data to play around with. We have tons of different filters too you can apply to our data in terms of being able to filter by day of the week, hour range, length of stay of a specific location as well. When it comes down to what the metrics look like, this is our metric section. This is how we get the term foot traffic data. We derive our data based off panel visits. And what panel visits are defined as are these are the number of devices that Placer has seen enter the geofence that we've drawn at least once over that time period. What we do from this data is we'll extrapolate it out to give you estimate number of unique visitors as well as number of total visits. What you can then do with this data is you can say, you can see things like visit trends. So how visits trended over a daily, weekly, or monthly aggregation. And you can see things like spikes and dips in traffic, where there are specific events that may have led to an uptick in traffic at a certain location. You can see specifically right here, this is the Friday before Christmas. You can even now compare on our platform how this Friday compared to last year's same Friday before Christmas. Are we seeing the same traffic flow? This is really a good way to understand the performance of a center within the city. The next area I'll jump to is going to be our trade area tab, which will show you where those visitors that are coming to our property, where they live. This is a heat map here where we can actually zoom in and zoom out across the country. So not only just looking at Ridgecrest, we can also look across the country and search into markets of where in Bakersfield are we pulling visitation from. This report is also adjustable, so you can look at different locations like home and work location, visitors, not just visits, and more. What deeper insights we can also get into is how many visits are coming from a specific zip code. as well as also being able to derive how far, or what percentage of our visitation to a location is coming from how far. So we can see that roughly about 5% of our visitation to the town center over the last year is coming from that 10 to 30 mile ring. And we can also see information too about tourism that's coming to a specific area, what traffic is coming from outside of 100 miles. We can derive and understand the amount of visitation coming from that far. The next element of the platform I'm going to jump into is our visitor journey section, which will show you where else people went. So this is great for understanding things like leakage, as well as also understanding the cross visitation of specific properties here. So favorite places, we can see that roughly 74% of the visitors that have come to the town center have also gone to a Walmart. One that I flagged earlier is this Antelope Valley Mall. You can see roughly 30% of the traffic is going 76 miles to this, has also gone to this Antelope Valley Mall at least once during that same time period. Other important data sets that you can also derive from this data is also looking at visitor journey, which will give you insights into where did people come from directly before and go to directly after. This is great at understanding cross visitation. So you can see things like 6% of our visitors have come from Walmart, and then 7% have gone to that Walmart directly after coming to this location. Other points in our data set I also want to mention is we have the ability to report not only by a center, we can look at individual properties within a center, so we can see what is the anchor property. We also have data around demographics, and what this demographic data set you're looking at here, what we're doing is we're taking our trade area and we're overlaying it on top of census block groups to provide you with information about things like median household income of an area, median age of these areas where we're pulling visitation from. This data is not coming from our cell phone panel, it's coming from our overlays on top of census block groups. We have information too around things like hours of the day in terms of visitation. So understanding what hours of the day are most frequently visited, most busy. We have daily visitation as well as also length of stay. Another really powerful report in terms of understanding things like what specific retailers should we try to attract to our town. This is our void analysis tool. What our void analysis tool will do is it's analyzing over 2,800 different chains to really be able to give you access and understanding what would be the best fit chain to fill a vacancy at a specific site, at a specific location. We look at things like demographic fits, frequent co-tenants, as well as monthly visitation. This is what I've shown here. It was just a quick 10 minute run through of what our platform's capabilities are. There are tons of different features, and one thing that Placer prides itself on is our customer success team that will also help and be there to assist your city and help them get the most out of our platform. That includes things like walkthroughs, training sessions, as well as also being able to understand the full capabilities of how other cities and civic organizations are utilizing Placer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back into our presentation here. And I'm going to jump into our next section, which will be about the subscription details. So the subscription about Placer, what is included in our subscription. The cost for the city is going to be $19,000 for a 12-month subscription. And what that includes is you have the ability to run unlimited reporting on our data for any location, any place. You'll have unlimited access to unlimited user access within the city, so anyone within the city can have access to a login and be able to run reports, not just in economic development. Parks and Rec has found use cases in so many other departments. We have custom reporting for things like retail leakage studies that we can run, and you also get that dedicated customer success manager who's there for training, onboarding purposes, and even helping with advanced reporting. So for right now, that is my presentation for today. I wanted to open the floor up now and pass it back to the council if they have any questions around Placer.
Well, first, Chris, thank you very much for providing the demonstration and for walking us through. I'm going to go ahead and open by providing an opportunity for council to ask any questions and any statements. I'll go ahead and start from right to left. I'll start with Mr. Gorman, and we'll go this way.
Thank you, Eric. Can I reserve the right to ask questions later?
Absolutely.
I'll do that. Pass.
Doc?
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Eric. So I have a few questions. So one of my primary concerns is on the privacy aspect of it. So the data that's collected in the earlier part of the presentation, you said is stripped of personal information. Is that done in-house through Placer AI, do you get personal information and then have to relegate it into non-user information, or how does that come into your collection?
I can take this if you want, gentlemen. It's actually, it never hits our servers with anything identifiable, and then from there, we take care to re-examine it for anything identifiable and make sure it's stripped out. So it's double de-identified. So anything we get from our app partners is de-identified on its export from them and on its ingress to us.
Is anybody else having a little bit of trouble?
I understand what you say. He said de-identified means that they scrub it to remove any PII information. It's scrubbed by the exporter app, and it's scrubbed again by their importer, by the importation of the software. So
Correct.
it's scrubbed. It's double secret probation. I just couldn't help myself. But the bottom line is it's scrubbed outgoing and incoming.
But it does come in.
No, it's
No.
scrubbed by the apps first to remove any PII, and then they double check that work.
So the app in itself, then, is there any risk of personal information coming in through that app and then being misplaced?
To place or no?
Okay. Now, with the apps, anyone that has a cell phone out in the public, are they being, let's just say, tracked or gathered data on in this collection world that you have?
So they would have to opt in to sharing their location data twice with the host application in order to be a member of our panel. We only choose partnerships with applications where that's location awareness is a core functionality as to why you would have that application. But they're told both at the application level and at the operating system level that you are indeed opting in to share your information.
Because part of this is for my own understanding of it too. So the average person that has a cell phone, they can disable that capability?
Correct. And they can partially enable it too, so only in use of the application.
Okay. And if that was disabled, but then do you monitor apps that are, I'm just saying, like, that would be unknown to these people, that they have that app and that that the ability for them to be tracked is still available to your business?
So I think what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that is there a way for us to be monitoring a device if it doesn't have a partner app on it? And that the answer to that is no. And is the public, if they are using a partner app, notified that their information is being shared with someone for research purposes? The answer is yes.
And then how does Placer AI, I mean, it goes through the apps, right? Do you have a partnership with the phone companies?
No,
To
just the applications.
Okay.
That gives us agnosticism to the either Android or iOS platform. It's just about the end user application.
So the phone companies themselves don't have to be into a business contract with you for you to use these apps to garner the information through the cell phones that people have, correct?
Correct, sir.
Okay. That's all I have right now, but I'll pass my time.
I'm just going to go ahead and reiterate one, again, important point. It's the double opt-in, which means that the individual user of the application, so all of us with our individual phones, I probably got 50 apps on here. With each individual app, I have made an elective choice, and I can make an elective choice to opt out of that tracking or to allow it, both ways. And I use an example. I had to try and explain Placer AI to a 12-year-old, and it was a joy because I talked to him about, when we were using our mobile apps at Disney World, it needed to have the tracking on in order to know we were in Disney World. That was what the requirements. But as soon as we left Disney World, we shut it off. And you have that choice. All the control in terms of what data is going out of your device is in the individual's control. And so I want to just reiterate that, again, every individual would have the choice of a double opt-out on their individual device if they chose to not want to share this information. Correct, sir?
Correct. Yes, at that application level. So if you were to map a ride between point A and point B with one of those ride mapping applications, you have a choice when you enter into signing up for that application, whether or not you want to share your location at all or turn it on manually every time you use it. Do it sometimes, like when I open the app, or do it all the time so I can have the ease of use when I want to map the ride. That is completely on the consumer when they make that decision. If that happened to be one of our partner apps, that application would declare that this information may be shared for certain purposes.
Correct. And so it is all clearly disclosed to the individual, and like anybody else of individual choice, they would have entirely their individual choice to not to opt out or to participate.
I was just going to add
Correct,
something to that, Eric. And if it's not like you can't change these settings, I just went and checked mine really fast. You can always go to your app info on your phone, go to settings, go to permissions, and it'll have on there whether or not you have your location data on or
Data
not.
shared, correct.
And you can turn it off.
Correct. Okay. Mr. Rotman.
I'm not tech savvy, so I have some basic questions. So we need to first download the app, is that correct? No.
No.
No, these are just referring to apps in general. Say you have, Yelp or Google Maps, like he was saying, you're trying to get, it applies to various different apps, and they're targeting ones that use location services, but the user has to agree to have those location services on for the data to be collected, if that makes sense.
So how do I know whether I should accept that or not? So what is the mechanism there?
So there's, well, first, yeah, I don't know if his mic's. So the first way, at least I can explain it, Solomon, is that, look, let's just say whatever the app is you have on your phone, opt in, or if you are curious, you can go in through your settings and check there. I have also went out and downloaded a specific app to see, hey, check for things that are tracking my location, just in case I miss something. Because a lot of times, and it is a lot, you'll get the option to either partially share your location data or share when the app's using or share all the time. And so I've actually went out and downloaded a specific app just to make sure I was checking what was going on there.
I think that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier about the apps, whether those
So
individual
let's
apps can do
say
it.
50% of the population choose not to participate in this. So your data, it depends only on the 50% of the population, correct?
Correct. And the actual number is about 9% of the population is
So
in
the
our panel.
data you collect is not, does not represent the entire community. It is representing only a part of the community because other people are not participating.
Correct, sir.
Am I right?
Yes.
Yes,
He
sir.
said you-
Okay, okay.
And I don't know if you heard Solomon, he said that participation rate is at about 90%.
Nine,
So
sorry.
with
nine,
partial
8 to
data-
9.
I'm sorry, what was that?
9%.
9%.
So about 25 million in the panel, about 9% of the US population.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Ridgecrest. Suppose Ridgecrest, 50% of the population doesn't want to participate in this. So your data is dependent on 50% of the population, and how can we take a decision on half data which we have? So that's a question I have.
So a lot of the presentation that Chris gave you was about our extrapolation routine. So a lot of this data is extrapolated from the base truths of what we know. Think of it like the way Nielsen works to tell you 70 million people watch the Super Bowl. That's coming from 26,000 set-top devices, right? So the rest of that number is extrapolated. Political polling kind of works the same way on exit polls, right? It's a small sampling, but you can get a really close number. That's the kind of fundamental theory on Placer.
Okay. Okay, so you gave example of Ridgecrest Town Center. So the data which you presented, so how is that useful for city to take a decision? That's only, in my opinion, that's only useful for the businesses because you are tracking at what time people are going into the business and what time their peak hours are. So which doesn't help the city, it helps the business to actually frame how they can operate.
Solomon, one of the ways we were able to get Chipotle and Panda Express here was based upon the information about how many people frequented McDonald's, Carl's Jr., Jack in a Box. So that information, when we were going to the ICSC conference and we're trying to convince somebody to bring Panera in town, they look at that data. Right now we're looking at Ross and Burlington. Burlington will not consider coming to Ridgecrest until Ross opens, until they actually see the data of their sales numbers, their number of visits, how long they're there. They'll make that decision whether or not we get additional shopping here. And because we're so remote and because it's so easy for them to open up a store in a more populated area, we have to have a little bit more advantage to sell this information to those folks that we want to come to our community to have these amenities. So we use this information for that purpose, to be able to argue and justify why they should come here instead of someplace else, because these are private entities and we have to be able to sell ourselves. And I'll be frank, they don't care that we're a patriotic community making a high income in the middle of nowhere. I know that Councilman Blades can validate that because every time we go, we bring those folks with us. So this data is important. So, when they look at the numbers of how those businesses are doing, it really depends on how well they're doing, what they're shopping, where are people coming from, what's our trade area? And the only way we can really prove our trade area is to show that we have people coming from Bishop, Kernville, Trona, Cal City to come shop here because it increases our numbers. How many people do we have come off the highway to come to Chipotle and Panda will then dictate whether or not we're going to get a Panera. So these are complicated formulas and decisions that these private businesses are making to come here. And we use this data when we go to these trade shows to argue on the benefit of our community to get these businesses here. It also helps if we have this data, like the bowling alley and the movie theater. What is our trade area? What are the number of people that potentially will use that? Well, that data will be helpful when we figure out, well, how many people are going to a bowling alley in Bakersfield or Victorville from Ridgecrest. What are those numbers? The community wants these amenities. We're just trying to do everything we possibly can to arm ourselves when we go to sell the city of Ridgecrest to be able to get these amenities here. Because without it, everybody else is using this data and this information to help sell their city to get the stuff that the community wants.
Solomon, if I could add to that, City Manager Strand touched on a lot of the economic uses for the data, which are obviously really great for recruitment. But as Chris covered a little bit in his presentation, this type of data can also be used for grant applications, public works projects, parks and recs, determining how events are doing and things like that. So it can be used by different departments as well as economic development.
And with growing e-commerce, so right now around 20% of the population shop online. So it is going to be like 90% by 2050. So if people are shopping online, how is this data going to help us to improve our community?
I still think there's an argument to be made in a lot of the information that's coming out from the economic development folks is that people still want experiences. You're seeing malls being converted into pump tracks that are now becoming a partial anchor to justify bringing a clothing store in. You're correct. A lot of people are shopping online, but there is a lot of data where people still have to come into the store. They still go to Walmart. They still do their shopping. And people want that experience. I don't think everything is going to go online. I think it's going to be a good mix. And then if we have, a significant number of people who are buying online, can we open up a storefront here where you can have a storefront like a clothing store where they're still shopping online, but they still have a local store where they can try them on in person or be able to have the returns here. So it's a little bit more complicated than just saying everything is going to be online.
Okay, I agree with you. So, I mean, what you said might be applicable for a big city like Lancaster, Bakersfield. For a small city like Ridgecrest, how we can apply that? Because you don't want to bring another Home Depot here, or you don't want to bring another Walmart here.
No, but we do
Just
want to.
because people are going to Walmart, or if just because people are going to Chipotle, we don't want to bring another Chipotle here.
Well, correct, but there comes a point in time when you have so many fast casuals that you need to be able to bring people off the highway to be able to have enough support for those businesses so they stay open. Because the old common saying is as you open up more restaurants, it cannibalizes themselves and somebody closes. If you want to keep that model where we still keep these amenities that the community, I seem to think they like, we have to be able to drag people off the highway, either through tourism or other ways, to get people to shop. You know, we're not on, I mean, the perfect location for Ridgecrest would have been 395 and 14. Would have been similar to Tehachapi and a lot of these other towns that are situated off the highway. They have a lot of people that come in, spend their money, buy gas, and they leave. We're not quite there. So we have to come up with the strategies. How do we get people off the highway to be able to keep these businesses open? And without that strategy, then you're right. We may have, you know, your Panda Express may close because you have too much fast food for everybody to survive. And that's the goal, is how do we get that? Now, if the community only wants a limited variety, then great. Then we just keep the same model we've had for 30 years, and we don't bring the variety here. But the whole idea is that how can we get more variety here that the community, I think, says that they want? I mean, I can't tell how many times I've read online where people want a whole variety of stuff that's probably never going to come here. Some will, some won't. But if that variety is going to come here, we have to have the tools to be able to convince people to come here, because we still have private industry, and they do spend their dollars wherever they feel they can make a profit.
Sure. Yeah, I'm only trying to understand how this product is going to help the community to develop our economy. I'm not worried about the security aspect of that. If there is a national security aspect, maybe DOD, they will take care of that definitely.
Yeah.
So
We've been working on Ross, actually, we've been working on Burlington the last 6 years I've been city manager, and I would argue that it was 2 years before that. This data is important for us. I mean, I'll let Councilman Blades chime in, because he's been on several of these meetings that can probably add a different perspective, or at least validate where I think I'm trying to explain. We have to have the information to be able to convince these folks that when they open up a store, when they can afford the overhead, the rent, and then they can actually have a sustainable business. And that data that we have is important. The data that they have of the trade area, the data they have of similar type businesses. And sometimes when you have a combination of businesses come in, they actually are symbiotic. They support each other. They benefit each other by having them in a cluster. So having this will help us be able to run these reports, figure out where are people shopping. I mean, we still have a significant number of people that shop in Lancaster, shop in Bakersfield. Where are they shopping at? And is there a large enough number of those people going down there? Now, we're not going to know specifically who they are, but we're going to know we have a significant number of people that are shopping a certain business down there. Can we then recruit that business to our location, because we can show that there's a demand for it and they're leaving town? Can we convince that enterprise to come here and open up a place here for the benefit of our community? And that's really what it's all about.
thank you, Mr. Strand. Thanks, Mayor. That's all I have for the time being.
Yes, I can say that having gone to a lot of these trade shows over the last couple of years, so I got appointed in 2019, and after that, I became the ICSC guy to always go. And what I found out is as soon as we'd walk up to most retailers, businesses, depending on what that business was, they would see the name tag that said Ridgecrest, and they would almost quit listening immediately. And it didn't matter if they had what that name tag said or who you were. It could be city manager, council member. They have a lot of data by the time you walk up to them. And so what I found out is that if we walked up to them with, so right now we're having to go off and we have consultants and we walk up with big packets of data, and we'll walk up and like, okay, this is what we got. This is what we think. And it can work. but it's not as accurate as at least what I've seen Placer been able to do. And I've sat through multiple demonstrations with Placer, asking a lot of the same questions that we've had here, a lot of the questions that the public has had. I've asked them ad nauseum. I've probably had at least 2 or 3, Megan, at least with you, demonstrations. So I don't know if the community remembers, but the city entered into a contract with a company called Buxton Analytics for about a year. And what we found is at the end of that year, they weren't accurate. They weren't working out for us, and we canceled that contract. They weren't providing us the benefit that we needed. So we have been looking, after that, canceling that, I won't say that we were gun shy, but we were definitely looking around. Is there some other way that we can get more clear at our hands data? And Placer seemed to fit the bill, but if you'll notice, that's several years that went by that we definitely didn't always pull the trigger, so to speak. And we've been just waiting, doing our, just watching to make sure it's going to work out. So the next question, if you're the public, you're looking at us asking, what same questions you just asked, Solomon. What's the use case? What's even the benefit there? The benefit that I saw is we can track and run reports and look at where we're bleeding. And I know Ron said it ad nauseum, but I'm just going to say it again, that that is a huge amount of information that we need, because the actual business, whether it's McDonald's or Burger King, not as important. It's just being able to have that data in your hand when you walk up to these businesses to say, hey, we want you to come to us. And depending on the economy, that's exactly what the case is. We have to pull them instead of them pushing to us. Ridgecrest is specifically that way. And we've also found out, depending on that business, even if the numbers look good, they may not come anyway. They have to have a lot of companies have a very specific business model. And that if that business model doesn't fit exactly what they're looking for, I'm talking location within a town, traffic patterns, et cetera, property, other businesses, they don't care. They really don't care. Even if all the numbers say they're going to be successful in Ridgecrest, they won't come. But if you walk up to them with information where you can run a new report, and keep in mind, these companies are doing the same thing. They're sitting there with a pad, usually in their hand. Where are you at? Ridgecrest. Zooming in. Okay. What did you say you're... And they will double check your information to make sure that you're good. So us walking up the old school way with a packet of analytical information, it just isn't as helpful when you're trying to market Ridgecrest. But I will say this, should Placer not be as helpful to us, then we'll have that same conversation at the end of the year. Yeah, we're just trying to compete, just trying to make sure that we get everybody in Ridgecrest the things that they really are looking for.
Okay.
Did you have something else, Scott?
Doc had one more comment. I have one too.
You kind of touched on one of the final questions I had, and that was that these companies, they're using this data, and I see where it's beneficial to them to monitor their current stats on their demographics business and where it's coming from, who's coming from where, but they're also using it to look at hot spots where new business could go in. And so to me, it seems almost redundant for us to be spending money to have information that they already have, and we already know the answer, whether or not we fit the demographics for that business to come in. So that's the question I have for the council is, why would we want to spend more money on information that these businesses they're ahead of us? And to me, it's we could use that money and spend it on other areas. I mean.
So what I'll say, Scott, well, not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Well, in my opinion, at least what I've seen, and this is having gone to these trade shows, what I've seen is, yeah, that's a valid point. But the other flip side is these businesses have no incentive. Like if you take a big corporation, they're not always out looking for Ridgecrest. And there's things that we're looking for that they're not. They don't know the community like we do. So if they go into, they're down in Santa Monica or places like that, sure, a lot more competitive. They're pushing to those areas. They're pushing around. Us having to push to them is what flips the script. It's what makes it to where we're the ones that are having to run our reports and go to them, because you're right, they do, when you walk up to them. But if we don't even know what we don't know, that's the problem.
So if we're close, we try to sway them into becoming.
Correct.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to paint it any other
I
way.
understand the,
Yeah.
the benefit on both sides of it. I just, I'm looking from an economical
Well,
standpoint.
look at your two new hotels. You
Determining
got,
whether or not I think it's worth it.
you got Holiday Inn Express and Town Place Suites. Never would have come here if we hadn't have reached out to them. We were never on their map. They may have access to data or similar data, but without us coming there and advocating for us and making the pitch, it's easier. I mean, if you have a trade area of 1 million people or a trade area of 40,000, and you can make money wherever you're going to be at, but in that trade area, you can open up another franchise that now you have the proximity of the stores. We're at a disadvantage to being out here. We have to fight hard. I mean, we've been fighting hard for years to get, we're still working on Panera, and that's been 5 years, and they said they want to come, and maybe they will, maybe they won't, but we still have to, every year, we meet with them to continue to argue our case.
So that's another, Ron, that's another thing I wanted to add because you touched on it, is the franchise portion. I've noticed that a lot of these bigger companies, so they're conglomerates, and these conglomerates will have blind spots because their franchises, they won't even look in a certain region, so they block out the United States in regions. And a lot of these franchises, if they think that somebody has a franchise and it's in the area and they're not looking at that trade space because it's Bakersfield, they won't even analyze our area. They won't really even look at it. So that's another case. I think we went to, it was Megan and I, we stopped and talked to, I believe it was a Firehouse Subs or one of those. And it took us walking up to them checking their data, us pushing the data that we had, and they go, oh, you know what? Let me look at my list. We do have a franchisee that could probably operate in that space. And so it's definitely a back and forth. And I think that us sitting around waiting for these companies to just come to us is not, because I want to actually be actively involved in the economic development of Ridgecrest. I want to be picky and choosy about what comes in here, and we don't always get to do that. But if I can go after the places that I'd rather see, that's a benefit to me.
So we're getting right on the border between presentation and deliberation. No, I'm saying and I want to give an opportunity for public to ask a few questions. I want to be clear that these would just be questions for Placer AI, not questions directed at the council directly, and that Placer AI is a guest of ours here at the session. And we are in a presentation, so I'm going to allow for some limited public comment. If they want to ask questions of Placer, we'll provide that opportunity. And if it goes too long, I just want to make sure that we understand we are in a presentation, not an agendized item. And if we have to bring it back for an agendized item, further discussion, we will. This was an opportunity for them to present the information to the public. So if there's any public that would like to ask a question of Placer, I invite them up to the podium at this time. At the podium, please.
Does this, the data that you use in accumulating all of this, is it strictly from cell phones? Hello?
Placer, can you hear the question?
Yes, it's strictly from cell phones. The underlying data is from cell phones.
So there's no vehicle GPS information. You don't rely on that at all?
We do not.
Okay. And what happens to the data after it leaves Ridgecrest? So let's say we have X amount of data and the city of Ridgecrest is using it. Where else does that data go? To what
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, to what extent, I thought I saw something in your presentation where you can zoom out to a great many other locations in the United States, people in Ridgecrest, to also mine data. So I'm assuming that the opposite is also true. Someone in Grand Rapids, Michigan could say, hey, I want some data on Ridgecrest. So the same, the data that you accumulate here in Ridgecrest for our benefit is also available to who? Who else out there in the world?
So literally anyone that subscribes to Placer, and that's the case today, whether or not we have a partnership or not.
Okay. All right. Is there any, are there any concerns, given that there's a military base here in the United States, has been concerned in the past, that DOD has been concerned with tracking of things like Apple Watches and other things that service people and civilian employees might use? Is there any
That
way?
is
Excuse
That's
me?
a fantastic question. We exclude military installations, churches, schools, all of from data collection. We take privacy very seriously, and we understand the implications of providing data on those type of locations, so we don't. And including origin data, we would not have any origin data from folks on a military base that live there.
So your data, your geofence on your data accumulation stops at the borders of Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, in other words?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Weston from the Daily Independent. Okay, first of all, I'd like to say that I have been trying to get in touch with Placer AI for a while, and I haven't received any responses. I think I have called and emailed, but Mayor Bruin said that I would be able to ask questions here. Okay, and then I did have the following questions. Hang on. Okay, first of all, our population, some of our population are older people and not super tech savvy. So the aspects of opting in and opting out while downloading an app, it's not clear to me exactly how that would work, nor is it clear to me how, from cell phone tracking data, how would you derive information such as gender and income? Because that's what it says on your website that is part of the information that you can provide to your subscribers. So that would be my first question.
Sure. So let me take it from the second point back, if you don't mind. All demographic, sociographic, and income information is based on the census tract from where a device originates from. So the theory that like people cohabitate around like people. We then amalgamate 50 of those visits and apportion the visitation accordingly across the 50 visits. So for example, if a census block group tends to be 60% one ethnicity, 40% another ethnicity, those 50 visits would be attributed appropriately along those lines and then extrapolated out for the rest of the visitorship that we would represent went to the point of interest.
Okay, so it's profiling, to use a term, would that be right?
I don't believe so.
No. Census data.
Census data, okay. And what about people like, I have an area code that is not from Ridgecrest. So would my cell phone pop up as a visitor?
Nope. So it's about the latitude and longitude for where that device rests at night, generally sleeping hours. For about 3 weeks, we would consider that census block group to be the home residence of that device. So taking the cell phone carrier out of it, taking the cell phone number out of it. It's all about where that device rests.
Okay, so you would be comparing the area code to where the device rests for 3 weeks?
Nothing to do with the area code. We would just, we have.
Never mind, okay, I gotcha. Okay, yeah. Obvious question, what does AI stand for?
Artificial intelligence.
Okay, well, nobody asked, okay.
Or analytical intelligence.
Sure.
Okay, and would there be the possibility, you say that you aggregate the data and that nothing personal is included, but once the city subscribes, would there then be the possibility to kick it up to a higher level of information in the future?
Absolutely not.
And how do we know that?
So we detailed quite a bit of that in the presentation. On our website, there's also a part of it that's called the Trust Center for these exact questions. Placer is about places, not people. It's about getting information on the places that are visited and the the traffic that went there, where it originated from, only from a block group level, and the habits of then that block group.
Okay. And one more question. There's been talk about using this data to substitute for population data in attracting new businesses to the area. Does anybody know for sure that that's really something that people are looking at, other than, and I know the council's not going to answer right now, but I do hope that our officials, local elected officials, will answer this and other questions from people here today in the future. But do we even know that that's something that new businesses are looking at, or is this something that's kind of speculative?
So we have 2,500 customers, about 600 in what we call the civic space. So I hope that's the case. It seems to be the case just from our own customership.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions. My name is Mike Sanat.
I'm sorry, there's only questions being directed
What you
to
just
Placer
watched
AI.
is what's called a dog and pony show.
Okay.
Placer AI is a so-called Silicon Valley startup, but was founded in Israel. You said
Mayor.
we could have public
Yeah.
comment.
Sir, we specifically said that these are questions for Placer AI. This is not public comment. There will be a public comment section, which you may say anything you'd
When
like
will the public comment session be?
after the presentation.
I thought we were done
No,
with the presentation.
I invited people to ask questions.
Okay.
My apologies, Chris. If there's anybody else that have a question.
Yes, I have a question for Placer AI. Is it or is it not true that your founder was a former Mossad agent?
This is questions about their product.
I'm asking them a question so I could ask it, and I just did. How about an answer, Placer? They're pulling tricks on us, Bruin, trying to twist it.
Okay, I guess I'll.
I get no answer on that, will I?
Hi. My name's Ian Ross. I'm the head of the civic strategy here at Placer. I think what you're asking is a personal question about a member of our, one of the employees of the company. So it's
Exactly
really
right.
not something that we're prepared to discuss in a meeting like this. And we don't actually discuss the same way I wouldn't want somebody to discuss my personal life. Like that's a question about an employee, which is an HR question. If you have a question about that, you can certainly ask our HR department if you have a question about a specific employee of the company, but that's not something that we're going to discuss this evening, which is a presentation of the technical product that the city's inquiring about.
Good faith, just what I'd expect from you. So what do you say to people like myself who hear this presentation, this sales pitch, and say that they don't believe what you're telling them? What is it you have that's out there to make us believe what you're saying about we don't have personal data. We don't know who these guys are. We scrub all this data out of PII and so forth and so on because I don't believe it. So what do you say to somebody like me?
Again, I think what Jeremy mentioned a few moments ago, and I'll reiterate, is you can go. I think I can tell you the web address. I think it's placer.ai, and then the term is a trust center, and everything and how the data works. And how we acquire data and what the what the data is that we acquire and how we treat the data is all completely transparently presented there. What data we acquire and what data we don't acquire. And to your question, it sounds like, if I may be so bold, that you have a certain level of what you're asking is what you should believe. There are, and I understand that there are, bad actors in the space of data. There are. We're not one of them. We are a privacy-first company. We only acquire data that has been, as the gentleman said earlier, the council member said earlier, has been scrubbed. And we only present data that has been fully aggregated and anonymized. And to the question, I think there was a question from the woman who was from the journalist who asked about the idea of a partnership. So let me just make that clear. The data that's currently on Placer AI is national. There was a question about can Grand Rapids look at the visitor data for Ridgecrest. the data that's on Placer AI today. And you're welcome to check it out, by the way. There's a free version of it. You can go and check it out.
Already got it.
Yeah, and so that data is already available nationwide. What we're doing is looking at the latitude and longitude, or the movement of mobile devices, and then being able to provide insights about how many visitors go to a given place, be they residents of your community, visitors, passersby driving along the roads as they pass through your community, which is another way of looking at opportunities from an economic standpoint, having those folks know about your local businesses. So again, I would encourage you to check out the website and what it says about how we work with data in the Trust Center.
Yeah, I already did so. And once again, I found myself finding it hard to believe. So you can claim it. I don't have to believe it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things that when we're looking at the data that we get back from Placer AI, I have not found any personal data attached
In
to
the
that.
demonstrations, we haven't seen anything either.
Right.
We've seen consistently that they followed the rules. Yes, sir.
So for Placer, I guess I have a question as far as this application goes. How accurate are the reviews of the Placer application that it'll guarantee growth of the economy financially and more business are willing to participate?
I'm sorry, this is Ian again. I just couldn't hear the end. It sort of petered out. Could you just
If you
repeat
go
that?
straight into the microphone, sir. Sir,
Okay,
speak
so my question was, how accurate are the reviews of the Placer application that it'll guarantee growth of the economic financially and more businesses are willing to participate? How successful has this pretty much been, with the reviews, the ratings, and everything that other people that use this?
So I'll tell you, I mean, in terms of reviews, that I don't think I'm familiar with the specific reviews.
So,
you may be
for
referring to,
example,
but
when I
I'm
use
happy to share
Google-
some success stories about how other communities have found success, if that would be helpful. But I'm not sure about which reviews that you're.
So what I mean by this, that is this. So if I'm looking for a place on Google to go eat at and stuff, I'm going to look at the reviews. Is this place good? Is it, is it crappy food? I mean, do I want to spend my money here? That's why I'm asking, the reviews. How have other people viewed this product as they used it?
So I'll see if I can address that in two ways. So when you refer to accuracy, what we provide, and should the city of Ridgecrest choose to subscribe to our data, they'll have full access, and all the members of the city will have full access to the platform that's live today. The data that we share is ground tested constantly by hundreds of data scientists who work in our company, and it's found to be between 93 and 98% accurate. I'm talking about just the data, how many people visited a given location. And that's based on ground truths with many of some of the retailers that you may have heard of that have, those, when you walk through the door and it goes beep and they count the people walking in and out of the door, right? So our data is actually just as accurate as those retailers who all use our data to know how many folks are visiting their stores. And then in terms of how happy are our customers, which is another way of, I think, speaking to this idea of reviews, our civic customers have less than a 5% churn rate, which means more than 95% of the cities and the counties, the tourism organizations and the economic development organizations, ranging from regional organizations down to little, downtowns and Main Street organizations, more than 95% of them stay with us year after year after year.
Okay. I may have missed this question, or you might have answered it, but how long has Placer been in existence?
So interestingly, the company was formed well before the commercial product was made available, and that's because we spent over 3 years before it was actually even publicly available, just getting those algorithms working and making sure that data was perfectly accurate. And the commercial version of the product has been available for just over 3 years. Is that right, Chris? I guess, yeah.
The commercial aspect has been available since 2018. We've started selling it, and then for civic organizations, we've primarily been selling for about 3 years.
Yeah, and the data itself actually goes back to 2017. So let's say, for example, you were curious about how many people might be visiting Ridgecrest downtown, and before COVID, after COVID, you can actually look back into history, back into 2017. The data goes from January 1st, 2017 up until about 3 or 4 days from today, as recently as that.
Okay, and then my final question, I guess, would be, because we're doing the presentation here in this city. So what is the highest percentage growth of other cities that use this application? Like, what were the percentages seen back? Because as this gentleman right here said, why would we spend money? Like, I mean, we want to get return for the investment that we spend, right? So what is the highest percentage that you've seen back from other cities that use this application? Like, why should we invest?
That's a great question. I mean, I think I can share a little bit, and I know that Chris and Jeremy can also share. I think when you talk about growth or success, many of our civic clients just have a different idea as to what they're trying to do. So here are a couple of different, just sort of success stories. We have an organization, I think it's a travel and tourism based economic development organization. They just wanted to show that many of the people that were coming to their lakes community were actually staying in hotel. They had thousands and thousands, actually tens of thousands of visitors to their lakes community in certain weeks of the summer. But they could show using Placer that the people who came and visited those lakes were staying in hotels outside of the community, which is another way of saying they were missing out on some of the revenue that you would get from a transient occupancy tax if they had hotels in the community. And they were able to go out and attract new hotels to their community by showing them just how many visitors were coming there, but not having a place to stay. And then we're driving quite far away to find other hotels. So that's just one example. We have other organizations who are applying for grants to add Wi-Fi into their park systems. This is part of the federal infrastructure grant program. And they wanted to show how many visitors they had who were using their park system and how those visitors, we were talking about the home location of the devices, that those home locations of the devices were actually in neighborhoods that had lower income populations that tended to use these parks. And then they used that information to go out and procure grant money to provide Wi-Fi into certain parks where they knew they would be serving residents that had otherwise been underserved. So again, it's all just about what Placer offers is just insight about who's going where, how often, how long they stay, where do they come from, and where else do they go. And depending on what the city's strategic goals are for growth, that would be really dependent upon, what the city hopes to achieve. It sounds like attracting retailers is part of the city's strategic economic goals. Right. I know that there are some of the members who had saying they visited the ICSC events where you can network with a number of retailers and franchisees. But again, depending on what your specific goals are, is really how your success will be measured.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Stan Rotora. I'm a 50-year resident of the Valley. I believe earlier it was stated that military facilities were left off of your database. Am I correct there?
That's correct, sir. We will not. We will not show origin information from a database. From a military base.
Okay. May I ask? Are military contractors also left off the database?
If they lived not on the base, they would not be left off, right? So theoretically, they would live in a community, one of the census block groups where we do see the latitude, longitude origination of that device.
I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing, and I didn't understand your answer. The question, I'd like to repeat it just real quick, is are military facilities that are not part of the military installation not in your database so that people could not be tracked to an off-site military facility or contractor?
So to me, there's a difference between facility and contractor. Facility, certainly. If a contractor is someone that has other business with the public, potentially not.
No, it would. Well, there are contractors that we're not supposed to talk about in public at all. And my question is, are those facilities part of your database?
Let me see if I can help it out to the gentleman's question. When we discussed earlier that Placer doesn't have PII, or what's known as personally identifiable information, we don't know, Placer doesn't know whose phone it is if we were observing just the movement, the latitude and longitude of the phone. So we don't know who a contractor is and we don't know who is the person behind the phone. We observe the movement of mobile devices, not of the people, right? So when Jeremy shared that the area of your station is not part of the geography where we derive that data. So if someone is inside of that station, we will not be pulling data from their phone, even if they have said yes to all of these apps and you can know my location. We do not pull data from inside of the geography of that of the station. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. At China Lake. So, but if a person, whether they are a policeman or a firefighter, or they work at McDonald's, or they are a military contractor, lives in another neighborhood that's not inside of that location, or lives in Lancaster, or lives in LA, we don't know whose device it is. So as long as they're not inside of the geography of China Lake, then we would be able to observe the movement of that device, assuming that they've opted in to one of these the apps that we're partnered with. So again, we don't know who the device is, and that's part of the privacy that's inherent in how we work.
Could any industrial facility opt out of your app?
It sounds like, if I'm hearing you, that it's not just the areas on the base that you're suggesting are sensitive, but that other areas that are not necessarily part of China Lake, I don't know what you're suggesting, but that could be sensitive areas. That's not something that the three of us on this call would decide, but we have an entire team dedicated to privacy that makes those decisions. And certainly that request can be passed along.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Tom Wicknick, and I'll save my questions for the council for the public comment portion. But you said that you are not making a decision on this tonight. This is just a presentation, correct?
The presentation is today, correct?
Right. Okay, questions for them. So you say you can tell about Walmart, how many people are there, when they visit and stuff like that. Can you tell where they came from and how long they were here?
Chris, would you like to speak to just the technical?
Yeah, so we can say where the locations they came from directly before, whether that be from home locations or another retailer or another location. We can tell you where they came from, where they went directly after. And then we also can tell you where those people also live, and then how long they stay at a specific location.
Okay, so you would be able to tell us that at the Ridgecrest Walmart, where we had 20 visitors from Kern Valley, 50 visitors from Bishop, 20 from Mammoth, some from Lone Pine, you could tell you could provide all that information?
Something like that, yes.
Okay. The question I have a small business here in Ridgecrest. At some time, would somebody in the city be able to just say, hey, how many customers went to Tom Wicknick's business in the last week? Could they find that out?
Potentially, depending on, there's a threshold of visitation that it would need to supersede in order for us to extrapolate. But if you had enough visitation, theoretically they could, yes.
What would that number be to bring it to that level?
I think it ends up being around 500 visits, right, Chris? Because if we take the 10% of the population, 500 visits in a given, whether that would take 2 years to get to that level or 1 month, at that point we could extrapolate visitation.
Okay, I guess I don't understand that answer. That
I'm sorry, sir, I just don't know how busy the storefront is, right? So if it receives enough visitation, theoretically, anyone that worked for the city could geofence it and get a projection of who went there and where they came from.
Okay, just making up a number. If I had 50 customers per day coming in my door, would that be available?
Yeah, that should work.
Okay, so somebody could find out how my business is doing by using this software.
Sure.
Okay? And at the same time, I got a question about the military installation, how you block them out. If there's, and I'm just going to make up numbers here, so don't take them as gospel numbers, but let's say there's 3,500 cell phones on the base, and you block out the base. Well, at lunchtime, they all leave and come into Ridgecrest and do whatever they're going to do. When they come out the gate, can you tell me where they're going when they come out?
No.
You can't?
No.
So if some of them went to Burger King, someone went to McDonald's, and someone went to Walmart, you wouldn't know that information?
Correct.
But you would know that information if I left my home in Ridgecrest and went to Walmart, you wouldn't know that I went there?
Correct. Yes, sir.
I don't understand how you can have a blockout for 3,000 phones that come out the gate during the day.
Would you like me to answer that, sir?
Pardon me?
Would you like me to answer that, sir?
Sure, I'd love to hear it.
Sure. So, as I was explaining to the reporter, it's all about the origin of the device and its latitude and longitude. If that latitude and longitude for its origin is within the military base, we exclude it from the panel. If it is not from within the military base, there's a good chance it's in the panel.
Okay, so when I go to work, when I work on the base and I live in town, my phone is being tracked while I'm in town. I go onto the base, and I've spent the first half of the day on the base and then come back out into the city to have a restaurant. Am I tracked?
Only for the second half of the day, not the first half on the base. Those latitude and longitudes are excluded from our information.
Okay. Okay. And I think the lady from the Daily Independent had a couple good questions, but one of them was that how some of us are not millennials or Gen Zs or anything else, and we're not real happy with our phones sometimes. Matter of fact, I get really irritated when I try and use an app and it says, turn on cookies to use this app. And I get fired up and I start throwing things around the house and the wife says, Tom, calm down, calm down. Okay, so I'm going about that as far as having to turn apps and tracking devices on and off. And I don't even know how many apps I have on my phone, but I got a bunch of them. So that is a real problem, being able to turn things on and off. And I'll save my comments for you for public comment.
Thank you, sir.
This will be the last question, Chris, and then we'll get the presentation wrapped up. Thank you for your patience.
Hi, my name's Lisa Lewis, and I wanted to ask a question about the app. From what I've read about AI, it's on all, or you don't know what apps they're on, and there is no identification that there is AI on these apps. Is that correct?
AI is an incredibly broad term, so I wouldn't know how to answer the question.
Okay, well, your specific, the Placer AI.
Sure. Yep.
That
So we do use some function of artificial intelligence in a capacity to do some projection work in terms of visitation, but also in suggesting things like comparable sites for benchmarking and whatnot.
But it doesn't, you're saying you can shut off the apps to where you can't be tracked. But
Sure.
there's some apps that, okay, for instance, if you shut that app off, you're not going to be tracked. But they're not a millennial. I don't understand all this stuff either. I'm 66, so I didn't grow up with this. But from what I understand, that there is no identification that the Placer AI is on any app. It's hidden in the apps. You can't find it on an app. But it can be in any app, including Facebook, Google, or anything you're on. So there's no way that you know if it's there. So if you want an app to track you, a certain app that you want to track you, the AI could be on there also, and you have no way of shutting that off. So you're basically tracking people without letting them know. Is that right?
So when you allowed whatever app that you're referring to track you, at that point, you were asked by that app, basically, do you want to allow us to track you? Here are the ramifications of that.
Yes.
Right? You would click through that twice, and at that point, you've agreed to those ramifications.
But you don't know you're agreeing to Placer AI. is what I'm saying. You don't know you're agreeing to that. You could agree to an app to track you, but you're not agreeing to be tracked personally by Placer AI on every place that I go and every place that I spend my money or whatever I'm doing through the day. Is that right?
So the one thing I would remind you is that we don't know it's you, right? We have no personally identifiable information whatsoever.
Okay, well, another question I have too is that we all know we just went through the COVID epidemic. I was going to say plandemic, but anyway, we all know we went through that. Now, could this be used to track people that didn't obey the COVID standards of staying home? Can you track people? I know you say you can't know the person, but you can know the person where they're going, where they're at, if they're leaving, if they're staying, and if we're supposed to be locked in our homes. Is this going to be used against people?
Again, we have no personal identification, so we couldn't say that it was your device that did anything. So it would be not useful in that situation.
Okay, well, thank you. Honestly, I don't believe it, but thank you.
I have some questions.
I've already closed it, sir.
I'm going to ask a question,
I'm
sir.
not going to do this. I have already
Why do
closed
not-
it.
why-
You came up
no,
with an
I have many
opportunity and you asked
questions.
to sit down.
No.
I'm going to give our
you
guests
can't cut
a
me
chance.
off. I'm going to ask a question.
Okay, Chris, I want to thank you for coming today, your entire team. I appreciate your time today.
I do have a question for Chris.
You have a question for Chris?
Yes.
I am more than happy to give the opportunity for Chris to address it, but at this stage, with the way the
I just want to know
conversation's
if
going,
Noam Ben-Zvi
I'm gonna go ahead and go
was a
ahead and cut
former
off the-
Mossad officer with
So once
Unit
again,
8200.
Jeremy, Chris, thank you
Is he?
guys for your time. I appreciate it, and we'll go ahead and move on with our public comment. So Chris, guys, thank you for your time.
So mine would be more of a comment.
Thank you.
And we'll let you communicate with them.
No,
Or we can do it in public comment.
Comment about it now.
Yeah, we can do it in council comments.
Okay.
Okay?
At the end of the meeting?
No, council comments after public comment.
Okay.
10-4? Is that okay? After public comment, we have council comments and announcements. We'll do it there. Great. Okay, next item on our agenda is our public comment of items not on the agenda. Persons wishing to address the council on matters that are within the council's jurisdiction and do not already appear on the agenda may do so at this time. Council will respond to any public comments, but may provide direction to staff to collect information pursuant to the Brown Act. The city council may not take action on any item that does not appear. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes, and the total public comment section is limited to 1 hour. Each person is asked to provide his or her name, and a public comment section is open.
My name is Mike Senat. What you just watched is what Wall Street calls a dog and pony show. Placer AI is a so-called Silicon Valley startup, but was founded in Israel. A video on YouTube presents compelling evidence that Placer is an intelligence gathering operation for Mossad, Israel's spy agency. Normally, we think of Israel as our friend, but in this case, it's not. In fact, the U.S. kicked out over 100 Israeli art students spying on military installations before and after 9/11. Placer AI is not our friend. A recently declassified report from the Director of National Intelligence tells us the same thing. The conclusion from this 48-page report is the commercially available information they get from your phone can be misused to cause substantial harm, embarrassment, and inconvenience to U.S. persons. It can also be used to cause harm to an individual's reputation, emotional well-being, or physical safety. Placer is hoping to Placer is hoping to go big time and is buying Life360's real-time family notification and tracking data. You have no place to hide with that powerful little supercomputer in your pocket. Placer sold their insidious technology into Tehachapi first and now Ridgecrest. What do these two all-American towns have in common? Answer, super important military bases nearby, Edwards and China Lake. What an odd set of coincidences. Israel's Mossad, crown jewel military bases, and they're all in Speaker Kevin McCarthy's congressional district. Placer has a massive amount of information on each and every one of us, but they only provide a small slice of their data to the city of Tehachapi. There's much more that they could provide to law enforcement if they wanted to. And they will once they get their foot in the door under the guise of economic development. At the May 3rd City Council meeting, Kyle Blades told the council, we can use this in other departments. City Manager Ron Strand wants cameras all over the streets to track all the cars on the road with license plate readers. Won't that be a great combination? It's a match made in hell. We can't let Placer in our town or people won't want to live or shop here when they find out that Ridgecrest is a police surveillance state. Recruitment and retention will become even more difficult, and Ridgecrest won't have any need for a convention or for a California Welcome Center or a Convention and Visitors Bureau. Who in their right mind would want to come here? The employees on the base are talking, and they don't like it. I've just been told that they've been instructed by their bosses, don't take your cell phones downtown. And they shouldn't take them anywhere in Ridgecrest. Leave them at home. Speaker McCarthy shouldn't endorse this company. He should kick them out of the country like the art students after 9/11. Mayor Brune wants our city to be a smart city, but they're really a surveillance gulag, and they're already in China. One city in China with hundreds of apartment buildings and tens of thousands of people has only a few exits, and the residents need to scan COVID passports and their faces to get in or out. Smart cities are surveillance cities, and they're un-American. Placer isn't going to improve your quality of life one bit, and it isn't worth the cost to your freedom to let them surveil our cities. Please give Kevin McCarthy a call or write him an email. Artificial intelligence and smart cities will become our worst nightmare, and Placer AI has George Orwell's Big Brother written all over it. When someone says to you that they already have our information, ask them, where do you draw the line? When it's under your skin? Thank you to the Ridgecrest City Council. We now have the benefit of the DNI's report, which you have in your hands, and a presentation by Placer to inform us. And they didn't inform you, they misinformed you. The debate on the issues of mass surveillance of American citizens by our government, as well as foreign governments and intelligence agencies, is just beginning in Congress. Placer's business model is predicated on mass surveillance, and the issues concerning violations of our civil rights and our privacy will be settled by Congress and our courts. We can send a strong message to Congress and just say no to Placer AI, and that is what the city of Ridgecrest must do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Podium to speak to the council.
I want to go. How about that? Turn around.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom Whitnick again. First of all, I'd like to ask about, if you go ahead with this thing, I have questions about procedures if you went ahead with it, if you decide to do that in the future. Like, who would have access to this information? Now, why would I ask a stupid question like that? Well, the city has a lot of information that not everybody has access to, especially sitting on the council there. Like, how much did my business pay in sales tax last year? Okay, well, that's private. He knows, or he can find out, but none of you can find that out, supposedly. All right? So on this one here, what if you wanted to know one of your competitors' institutions, how much business are they getting by tracking information? And you can even get demographics of that tracking information, apparently, we hear tonight. So you'd wind up with being able to check on your competitors if you're sitting up there. So my bringing that up is that, what are the controls gonna be? So probably somebody couldn't use that for personal gain. Just like within the police department, there's databases in the police department. We can't use that for anything personal. It has to be official business to use that by law. Would there be controls on the use of this data is my point in these comments. So nobody could use this for personal gain, whether legal or just ethical, perceived or not. One thing I've talked to a few of you about in the past was when I sat up there a couple of times when I've been elected, there were times I would come into a meeting with a pretty good decision in my mind on how I'm going to vote on a particular item. And then I learned something. I learned that coming out here and listening to people that come to this podium sometimes have better information than what I came out from that back door when I sat down up there. And sometimes these people should be listened to, not just heard, but listened to. And that is the point. When you get this point where you're making a decision on something this important, which I think some of you might think it's important, some don't, but it is. That you come out here ready to receive information and maybe change your mind how you might vote by what somebody said as they came to the podium. You've done a lot of polls in the city. Well, somebody ran a poll on Facebook twice. Did you see the results of that poll about this, whether we should get this? 93% said no. Why doesn't the city run a poll on their own and poll the people, see what the results would be? Or don't you trust the people? You do on a bunch of other polls, we'll run a poll on this one. And finally, I have a press release here, and it's from the Commerce Department, Senate, Washington, D.C. Proposed legislation, a bipartisan bill backed by Republicans and Democrats. And this bill is so unbelievable, it goes into what we're talking about here. And it's called the American Data Privacy and Protection Act. And this described here is, this bill would protect consumer data privacy and security and prevent companies from over-collecting and misusing American citizen data, all while protecting kids, empowering consumers, and providing strong enforcement mechanisms. And near the end of this press release, this is the kicker. And again, McCarthy, our speaker, our representative, has the House looking at this legislation right now. So this isn't just some pie in the sky thing, all right? And here's what they're talking about having in there. The legislation would require entities that handle personal data to adopt baseline privacy and security safeguards, including individual rights to access, delete, port, and correct personal data, as well as rights to opt out of targeted advertising and data transfers. Think about that when you're thinking about whether to do this or not. Washington.
Thank you, sir.
Stan Rotora. I guess I'm a little confused as to what is the intent of what you're going to be doing going forward at this point. This was a presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions, although I think it's important that before you do anything with regard to taking any action of adopting anything that Placer AI is talking about, that there be a public hearing regarding that, not just have somebody opt into it. So I just want to know, what is the current plan for potentially adopting this, and when will the hearing be for that?
Thank you, Mayor. To answer your question, Council cannot take any action on this item without having it being posted on the public agenda. So if the Council decides to deliberate this and take it any further, it'll appear on the agenda for a Council meeting, and the public will have an opportunity to speak again on it.
Okay, exactly what I wanted to hear. I just don't want something to show up in the newspaper saying that, we've adopted this thing and it's yours. But I appreciate the that information. I look forward to a public hearing on this in the future. Thank you.
I want to go and amend that just a little bit, Martin, and I don't intend to second guess you in any way because you are much wiser than I am. But I want to be clear for the public that if the council chooses to bring it back, and if this council feels it needs to have a public, it will. But it is under the approval authority of the city manager without further resolve, to be clear. The dollar amount of spend is under our policies for the city manager. I just want to be clear about that for the sake of clarification.
My name's Mike Neal. I'll just clarify that a little further. That means if Ron Strand wants to go ahead and buy this software, disregard everything everybody's objected to, he could just go ahead and do it. And even over objection to the council, he can do it. And actually, we've seen that kind of thing happen in the past, so it's not like it can't happen. Let's touch on one just real quickie little lighter item first. And it hasn't been lighter, but it is at this point. Waste management and the organics trash pickup, the infamous subject. Well, you do have some helpful members on your staff. I'll give them that, and they provided information to me that educates me about how much organic waste management has picked up in the last 6 months. And that average over the last 6 months is 71.85 tons. They've also told me how many households there are that are subscribed to the service. And if you take the average of those households, you get a whole 5 pounds of organic trash per house per week being picked up to those that have even bothered to have the service. Guess what that amounts to in volume? That's about, you have to take a guess as to how many pounds and how much volume per pound, but it's about 3 whole gallons per household per week. To pick up that much, little tiny bit from every house that has this service, I believe my numbers from the past that I recall means that Waste Management got about $500,000 out of our pockets for that privilege. Guess who else profited nicely on this? The city got a franchise fee of $509,000 for fiscal year 2023. So we're not just paying Waste Management folks, we're paying the city of bureaucracy too. I want information about that. I want to know where you're putting that money and what you're putting it towards. I'll be looking forward to that data. As far as Placer AI, I found a whole gist of conversation completely missing in all of that 30, 40 minutes. And what I saw completely absent was any discussion about what this council is going to do to protect our liberty and privacy. All we talked about was getting more business in Ridgecrest. I found myself thinking, did this place transform into the Chamber of Commerce all of a sudden? Is this all this council can talk about, is getting more business for the businesses in town using my money? I'm not a business owner, so it's not going to help me a bit. Why isn't it in the Chamber of Commerce meeting room where it's being talked about? Why is it even being talked about here at all? People need to think a little bit about what you're supposed to be about up here. You took an oath to protect our constitutional rights, and premier in those, amongst the top 5, is privacy, fundamental to having liberty. And if you think that this company with the proven background, like I tried to get and couldn't get an answer, except I certainly didn't get a denial, a company founded by a former Mossad agent has any care for our privacy, I don't know what's in your diet, but you might need to change it. All I got to say is, talk about polls. My vote is no Placer AI in the system. We don't want their foot in the door in Ridgecrest. This kind of thing only leads to further invasion of privacy, worse use of the data. It never gets better. It never improves. It always goes downhill. And if you want to let them in, then you're guilty of letting the camel's nose in the door, under the tent, and it'll be here forever. Getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Tell the city manager, no Placer AI, no spying on citizens in Ridgecrest.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Lisa, I'm Lisa Lewis. I'm a citizen here for 66 years in Ridgecrest. I just want to state that I'm against it. I don't think it's right to jeopardize my freedom, my rights, just to bring businesses into the city. I understand you want businesses, but that I shouldn't have to give up my rights, my privacy, just because you want businesses in Ridgecrest. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So this is my very first city council meeting. I'm not going to lie to you, but I spoke with you on the phone a few times. One time. I'm a union official out of Local 783 of San Bernardino, California. We handle areas in Trona and stuff. So is this a time for just comments or is it questions too?
Yeah, any public comment. We
Okay.
don't respond to questions, but any public comment.
Okay. So okay, so you don't respond to questions.
Well, if I can clarify though,
Yeah.
the way it works is due to the Brown Act, if we get to discussing anything like during this period, if it hasn't been agendized, then we get to a point where we're violating the Brown Act. So the way it works is like we can ask clarifying questions. So if you say, hey, this isn't on the agenda, but there's a light out. I can say, oh, hey, where is that? And then what we'll do is we'll wait until after the public comment section's over, and we'll have the staff either come and talk to you, or I can address your question at that point if I have the answer. But there's a reason why we don't sit and have like a back and forth conversation, because it gets into a slippery slope.
Okay, I just had one question, but I mean, it's not even going to be a
What's that,
debate.
Mike? Oh, all right, man. I'm sure he'll get his time.
Well, I just
Sir, if
actually.
there's any issue, we'll be happy to.
Yeah, I just actually had just one question, just one answer. It's not even a debate. This guy right here, I have to keep on going back to you because you said something very interesting, and they apparently feel the same way. How is it beneficial? Because you asked that question yourself. How would you feel like it would bring in revenue? I mean, we travel in from out of town. Yes, it would bring more contractors. Would it bring more contractors? Would it bring more revenue? Like, how do you feel about this?
First off, I don't normally answer, back on the public comment, but in this case, I don't really see that it benefits me as a citizen in this town or so much the city itself. There's some benefit to it, ease of data. I think it benefits the corporate retail businesses, and that's why I brought up what I did about they're already using this data. They're already buying it and studying it and knowing where they need to go. They don't need us to tell them that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment? Okay, I don't see any public comment on the phones. We'll go and flash that real quick. Okay. We'll go and bring it back to council for council announcements or directions. Skip, you got anything?
A lot of my questions were answered, and I was reoriented as I need to be because I'm always new at everything, it seems. The older I get, the newer everything comes at me. But I would have asked Ian or Jeremy or Chris about the algorithms themselves that these guys develop and that I'm sure are wonderfully proprietary. There's a slug of companies that do this, that sell this information. You follow your nose on the internet and you'll be surprised as I was. It's a booming business. Partner apps were mentioned by one of the technical fellows there, perhaps Chris. And I would have liked to have known, is the list of these partner apps?
He specifically stated that it wasn't available.
Not available.
Yeah, they're all under NDAs. He
I would have
specifically
asked
stated
them
that.
just again for orientation, and I'll bet you Kyle knows. Name me one or two.
So I've asked that question. directly at ICSC, and they don't list those on purpose.
Yeah, I can understand. They're proprietary stuff. These guys are, well, clever. But I've enjoyed most of the presentation and the public's questions. I observe, though, they're mostly all negative. I think that this particular business that Placer is into, they've got a public relations problem. All of them. At least that's my feeling. People do feel like their individual worth and identity are diminished as they're carried through computers in block demographics. May not particularly be bad. The key element of a representative republic is when we vote, and we place ourselves proudly and patriotically into demographic elements to either win or lose elections. So being part of a block, a nameless small element of part of a block, isn't necessarily bad. I find, though, as I need to learn a lot more about this. As an engineer, I like to follow my nose and find out about algorithms. What is all the other stuff that's used? I'm just intensely curious about this. And I will. And also, I'll be thinking about it, and I'll be writing about it. There, my comment.
Doc, anything?
Sure. So the way I look at it is surveillance of a private citizen in this country. My understanding is that it takes a warrant to surveil a private citizen. And so a couple people brought up, kind of touched on the edge of this. So they know where my phone rests. So in my house. So monitoring that, they know public information of where my house is, the resident. You can get county records. Better yet, there's apps out there which you can download on your phone, which will give you their geographical mapping maps. I use them. So on these apps, you can zoom in and you can look at very solid detail of the properties. You can look at, I use them for outdoor activity hunting. It tells you the landowners, it tells you the public land, the private land, so you know that you're not trespassing on private land and you're respecting that privacy. Very important if you're in, well, particularly western states in general, Colorado, Wyoming, they take their privacy on public land or on their private land very serious. So they know where my phone rests. I drive myself and my phone, and I go to work. I don't work on base, but if I worked on base, they say their fence stops at the base. Person leaves the base, comes back out, and then picks it back up, and we go back home. Somebody can monitor your habits, your daily habits, and track and learn vast things about you. I'm sure there's a whole lot more that's understood about you that they're not letting on, in the presentation. I would guarantee that. And so now we know who I am. They said we don't give out personal information. Well, you sure made it easy to find out who I am. I'm not a rocket scientist, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. So we can identify, Mr. Bignick, you kind of was touching on this a little bit. We can identify who went where they came from, and who they are. Now, you could say, well, by law, they're falling within these parameters. I understand that. It's common available information. It's because of that they can utilize this. I don't like where it's going. I think it is a direct violation. This kind of information, to be able to look at the population as a whole and know their habits, where they move, how they move, when they move, I would think, as if I was a military strategist, I'd be going, hey, that's good information to know. We know how these people move. We know how they act. If I'm hunting, I know that's the first thing I look at is the habits of what I'm looking for, the geography of what I'm looking for, when they move, how they move. So for me, I think this is bad. I think it's not good for the bigger picture. We're looking at it, they're looking at it from, oh, it's a business thing. It's great for business. It can bring economic, and yes, that's true. And I've said that before, that there is a benefit to this in a small segment of what it could be used for. Is it benign? At previous meeting, I said it was benign. Having heard this presentation, folks, I don't think it's benign. I think in the big picture down the road, that the more we encapsulate our private selves with this state control, government control, the worse it's going to be on people. I don't like where it's going. So anyway.
Solomon, you have any council comments?
No further comments. Thank you.
Kyle?
No, sorry, I was answering a question from somebody. No, so I think you, sir, asked, sorry, I didn't remember your name, but Joseph. Yeah, so you asked what was the benefit to the city. So when we, especially on the Economic Development Committee, what we were looking at is a holistic picture and how we can, so you did see during the presentation how if you can look at trends, like Scott was saying, and you can look at how, so we know, because we've done countless polls, what people are looking for in the city, what people are after, and that's, a lot of it goes back to quality of life. So it's not as simple as saying economic development. It all goes in a big circle. So the benefit is, if we have a large amount of the population asking for certain businesses, certain services, certain this, certain that, we should probably try to figure out what that is. Now we can and have in the distant past go out and just get consulting companies to do that same information for us. And it's the same, it's just not as readily available as picking up a tablet. So that's the benefit, because then you can more quickly either pivot economically to draw in a business. We can ask Parks and Rec, like, look, maybe this service, maybe whatever it is you're offering or this program isn't quite as popular. You know what I mean? So there's a whole holistic picture that we're trying to tie in. Yeah, please do go ahead. Sure. You could, but what you're getting is actual data, not someone's opinion on that day because they didn't like the ice cream machine was down, or you know what I mean? Like, it's actual just data that we got to see people's habits and patterns as opposed to someone's opinion on a review. I'm not saying there's not some validity to what you're saying, because I picked that up when you were making your comments about reviews and what that looks like.
By the way, good afternoon. I'm sorry. Can I be heard?
I'm sorry. I don't know who's speaking.
Oh, he's still online.
Oh.
Hi. Yeah, this is Ian.
Well, hey, you're during my comment section, so I guess if you got something to say, go ahead.
Ian, I appreciate it, but I apologize. I'm not going to have it come in from the outside. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So Joseph, I definitely just wanted to make sure that I. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's
exactly.
called WebEx, but yeah, you're right. But-
That's fine. Yeah, I get you. So no, all I was trying to say is there's a holistic picture to the only reason the city would even entertain using something like this is for that reason. And the next thing I wanted to see is, because you said this is your first council meeting. So I need to reiterate, we do have a duty up here. We do have a duty to our citizens. And if we weren't listening to as many citizens as we are listening to, this isn't even something we would entertain. If I didn't think that, I don't remember who it was, but somebody said, you want businesses. I necessarily don't. I grew up in Ridgecrest, California. I go through the drive-through dairy because I get my mixed cone that I like. I go to the Midway Cafe on Saturday morning and get the biscuits and gravy because I like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a local. I don't necessarily need a whole lot of businesses. It's listening to the public and seeing what it is they want. And the next thing, I heard a lot of comments about privacy. And yeah, so if our questions back to that company came up as anything other than what they came up as, then we wouldn't have even entertained them. And we also have a duty here to keep our finger on that. If we think that something's amiss, that's where we cancel. Nope, sorry guys, we're not doing that. That is why we have elected representatives. That is our whole purpose up here. And we do that. And I can't speak for everybody, but I take it very seriously. So I didn't want you to, this being your first meeting, for you to walk away thinking that nobody listens, nobody cares, and we're just moving ahead with some software, and no, that's not the case. That's not the case at all. So, and I think I addressed your benefit question, and Lisa, I wanted to address you as well. I think you had some questions about how the app worked, or not the app, it's not an app, about how the software worked. But I will entertain any of your questions that I know our staff will too. If you have any questions, whatever those are, please, I can give you my number. You can talk to any member of our staff, and we can try to clarify those so that you don't feel like you're kept in the dark. Yeah, well, and it's a problem. It's a problem, and we're trying to fix it as best as possible. And I can hand you one of my cards if you're getting ready to leave. I can hand you one of my cards. I'm sure. Sure. This is usually the exciting part, and then people will leave.
Then people will leave. Yeah.
Yep, I get that. You bet. Here, I actually had a stick.
I think they're all at the table out front too, aren't they?
Nope. I want to
Are
do this
they upstairs.
I want to do this right now
Upstairs.
during my comment section. I don't want this to get lost. Nope. Yeah, please do. So this is my cell phone number, and if I don't have the answer to the question, our staff will, and we'll figure it out.
Thank you.
Yep. So that's Placer AI. And I just want to reiterate to the community, we're up here for a reason. We were elected for a reason. We do have a duty, and we take that seriously, and we will continue to do so.
So I want to address a couple of your comments, Doc. The big one for me is just, this is not about individuals, it's about people. It's about aggregate data. And whether I have 2 cell phones and one sitting at the office and one sitting at home, it doesn't know whether I'm the person with that or I'm the person with this. It has no idea who I am. It just knows that there's a device that's located at this latitude and longitude. And then it moves from here to there, from there to here, from here to there, and statistically provides that data. And I made an analogy earlier today about the idea of when man discovered the shovel, he didn't continue to dig with his hands. And that's what the internet is. The internet is a conglomerate of data that exists now compared to what it exists 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 5 years ago. Now, yes, of course, there's always risks with individual privacy, and that's the arguments that are being made are perfectly reasonable that they have those concerns. But they said on no unequivocal way that first, the individual liberty to be or not to be tracked is in your hands. It's in your device. It's in your control. It's able to be controlled by you. You can turn it off, you can turn it on. Now, when we say, well, we don't know how to use it, so that's a reason not to provide it, we're making excuses. We're making, let me finish mine. Go ahead. We're making those opportunistic excuses. And I look back at it and say, well, so we're going to wait until all of the society understands how to use apps and then use the technology. Or we're going to wait until such a time as then we're going to use technology. The simple fact is that I appreciate what you said about military strategists. But there is such a thing as economic strategy. And just the same as military strategist says, this is where this is and this is where that is, understanding the economic strategies are just as important if we're going to build a community that can sustain itself long term. We have an economic problem in this community that's been shared to me by Carol Vaughn for about 20 years. And I use her for a reason, because she's always said, we have way too much dependency on the base. We are economically dependent on the base. We need manufacturing, we need this, we need that, we need this, we need here. If we're gonna develop those types of things, we cannot do it with anecdotal communication. We have to do it with data-driven knowledge. And the best way to gain data-driven knowledge is to do exactly what Mr. Blade said, which is vet the company, which has been vetted in economic development at least through 2 meetings. It's been vetted here in the presentation again. It likely will get vetted again at a council meeting. We've done everything in our power to vet it for the public. And of course, there's going to be members of our public who disagree with it. That's perfectly fair. But is that representative of our community? Is that representative of what our community wants? I believe our community is absolutely seeking growth, is absolutely seeking more economic opportunity, more individual jobs, more opportunity for growth. And if we're going to continue to try and do it with anecdotal evidence or anecdotal conversations, this is the result. The result is what we've seen for the last 20 years. Everyone on this dais can say, have you seen Ridgecrest significantly grow over the last 20 years? And the answer is going to be no. But if we're going to drive an economic growth strategy, which, again, we have had council discussions, we've had strategy sessions, we've had communications about what we want to see. If we're going to balance this community, we have to look at all the data. It's like going into a room with a blindfold on and hoping that you guess at the right one that wants to buy you. If you go into the room and you say, hey, I can show you that I can bring 20,000 people that have a pattern of spending like this, like this, like this, and I want to talk to you about bringing your business to our community because I think you can be successful, that whole conversation is going to change. Yeah, it's salesmen. You're absolutely right. Somebody said dog and pony show. But is not sales part of what we do in everything we do in our lives? We sold ourselves to our wives. We sold ourselves to our clients. We sell ourselves to our business customers. We sell ourselves to our people, okay? But the simple fact is that if we're going to leave a tool sitting on the sideline, then we're going to get the results we hope. And I would use that answer. If you want to dig a ditch, you're going to get a shovel and dig the ditch because it's the most effective tool. You're not going to use your hands. Data-driven analytics is that tool. It's been that tool since the internet exploded, since these things showed up in 2007 and took over everyone's pocket. But the longer we sit and say, well, we're not going to use this data because we don't want this, we fear this. We're even though the company has to provide multiple audits for their SAS 70 privacy, they've reiterated their PII commitment. They've reiterated all of the data, the double opt-out, everything that they've kept saying. But yet we are sitting with a handful of individuals that have an opinion, which is absolutely right, that says we just don't trust them. So don't do it. Don't trust them. Don't do it. That's not an argument. That's anecdotal emotion. And so this isn't about individuals. This is about aggregated people's data. I want to ask a question of my council. Me personally, I don't need to have it come back. I believe in City Manager Strand. I believe that we've communicated. I don't need to see it again. However, we serve as a council. Is there a desire for the council to have this brought back as an actual agenda item for further discussion and approval?
Well, first off, I want to address back, a
Sure.
couple of those comments that you made. So the program, the system is set up so that it works in their favor when it comes to these apps. So yes, we have an opportunity and should be able to just opt out. But the way the population is that the average person isn't aware of all the different apps and ways that they can be manipulated. Just like the phones will, we talk about this and then we pick things up. So it is an individual thing because they are using this data to manipulate individuals on, what they want to buy, and so we could argue at that point until the cows come home. Secondly, this tool, the shovel you talk about, there's a big looming elephant in the room, and that's the privacy of individuals. And so it at this point in time, they can say, well, it's not violating privacy, but yet in a whole lot of ways it is. So.
And that's where the joy of us having different opinions. This is great.
I've spoke to, I don't even know how many people. I have yet to have one person say, oh, I want that. I want AI in my life. every single person I talk to, I say, hey, what do you think about this? They're like, oh, I don't, why do we need that for? I don't want people tracking me. I don't want, it's a big thing. So, and you could say, well, it's a small segment of people. I would wholeheartedly disagree on that. That it's a small segment of the population that doesn't want to be pinged and tracked and analyzed for the sake of economic development. So,
If I may, Scott, and I know, Martin, we're verging.
Martin's ready to climb out of
If I may,
his chair.
Scott, so just to add on.
My recommendation would be that the
And that's why I was asking whether it should be agendized.
If there's a desire to
be
continue deliberation or start a deliberation on this item.
Correct.
I think this part of the agenda allows the council the ability to say yes or no, whether or not you want to see it again.
Yes, and that's what I was asking, is I need to know from my fellow council members if they want to agendize for us to have the discussion and then have the council formally approve it.
So in that spirit, I was just going to say something that I thought might help with that situation, but if you want to make it cut and dry, we can just call it. I don't have a reason.
I think I know Martin's climbing out of his chair because we're flirting with a lot of different lines. And,
All right,
and
I don't have a
it
reason.
seems clear that,
I don't have a reason.
yeah. So again, is there a consensus that this wants to come back for council? I personally don't need it to.
I have trust in my city staff. I don't need to see this come back.
I personally would like to see it come back and be agendized if we're going to.
And I think all it takes is one council member. I think that's perfectly fair.
Oh, okay. I was going to say no. I'm curious enough about it. I'd invest in it this time around, 1-year subscription, and let's see how it goes. I'd like to hear from our city manager on several occasions throughout that year how the data's going, what we're getting out of it, and what we've learned. We don't need to continue the subscription beyond a year, I don't think.
Yeah, we did that with Buxton because that was the very first meeting I ever had was the cancellation of Buxton. That was my very first meeting.
So that would be my druthers. Thanks for asking.
I want to respect Councilman Hayman's desire to have additional discussion on it. He has every right to that. If he has concerns that he wants to continue to address, I think that that's reasonable and perfectly fair. And so we'll agendize it for a future meeting for council approval.
Yeah.
Okay. We will move on with our meeting. Thank you for the spirited discussion. Next is our consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered routine and non-controversial by city staff. Consent items may be approved by one motion if no member of the council or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and be considered in listed sequence, with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the city council concerning the item before action is taken. I'll now read the 6 consent items. Item number 1 is proposed action to approve the draft minutes of the Ridgecrest City Council regular meeting dated July 19, 2023. Item number 2 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest approving the hiring of a retired annuitant as interim police chief for a limited duration under Government Code Section 7522.56 and 21221. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest reenacting and adopting a position description for Fleet Mechanic 1 into the classification plan. A resolution of the City of Ridgecrest designating an ADA coordinator and adopting procedures in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Number 5, authorization for the city mayor to sign the notice of completion, the city clerk to file said notice of completion, and city staff to release retention in the amount of $74,584.01 to contractor Bowman Asphalt 30 days after reconstruction for the Franklin Avenue Street Improvement Project. And number 6 is proposed approval of increased appropriations to the fiscal year 22-23 budget for gas tax fund, streets, utilities, electric. Does any member of the council wish to have an item pulled? Hearing none, does any member of the public wish to have an item pulled? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second.
Please vote. I will give a disclaimer out. We're still working out the bugs, so please be patient. Riley and Matt are diligently paying attention when what's going to happen. Solomon, it does. Not gonna like you? Okay, let's take a roll call vote. Mayor Bruin. Oh, there we go. The motion carries 5 yeses. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a little slow and the responsive. Next item is our committee reports. Megan, RACVB?
Hello again. Can you hear me? Okay, there it goes. So our RACVB, we met on the 26th of July. I have just a few notes for you guys. STR report for the week of July 9th to July 15th, we saw a big increase in demand. It was up by 11%, and revenue was also up by 16.4%. So that was something I wanted to share, that demand is still high, because I know there was people concerned that we have all these hotels, demand might not be up there. So it was up by 11% from the 9th to the 15th. As you guys heard at the council meeting previously, the TBID increase is going to be coming back to council for the second hearing in September, the first meeting in September.
Second meeting in September.
Is it the second meeting in September?
20, yes.
My apologies, second meeting in September. I have my first and second mixed up. Filming was a bit slow in July. We had 0 productions, and part of that was may likely be due to the writer's strike as well as just the heat. But I did have a press release here. I won't read the whole thing, but the executive director of the RACVB, Carrie Crutcher, was elected to the board of directors for the Film Liaisons in California statewide, FLIX. I'll just give you a brief. FLIX serves as a vital advocate, promoter of filming in California, fostering a collaborative environment between local film commissioners and the entertainment industry. Their efforts contribute to the continued growth and success of the film and television production sector, benefiting the local economy, job creation, and cultural enrichment. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. I do have the full press release if anybody's interested, but that's exciting that Carrie will be representing Ridgecrest on the board of FLIX. Let's see. So we did mention some of the community events coming up. Obviously, the Night Off Balsam will be on the 12th here at City Hall due to the road work that's going to be on Balsam. One of the ex-officios from the BLM did report on the DP4 races. That'll be August 25th and 26th out at Spangler Hills. So there's information online for anybody who's interested in those kind of off-road racing. The RACVB is getting ready to put on their car show in September. I don't have the specific date with me at the moment, but I will follow up with Carrie and report on that at the next meeting as well. Chamber and IWVEDC are still working on Parade of 1,000 Flags. That'll be the 9th of September. High Desert Classic, that's coming up in October. So there's some future events coming up for the next few months. Marketing was down a bit, probably again due to the heat and all the big budget campaigns around 4th of July. So they're looking to see a boost in that in the cooler months. And then the last thing I'll just mention for the public's benefit is they are looking to hire a full-time position for a California Welcome Center assistant / event coordinator role. So if anybody knows of anybody or is interested, reach out to the RACVB for information on how to apply for that. And with that, that was everything I had for RACVB, unless there's any questions.
No questions.
Nope. Thank you.
Nothing here. Any questions? Nope. Thank you, Megan. Next is our infrastructure committee.
Yep, we did. We met on July the 27th. We looked, Travis, our public works director, has a few studies going forth on a couple of intersections that we were concerned about. My notes got bled together, Travis. I may ask for your help. But in about 3 weeks, work on China Lake is going to start, but that was approximate. We're still not quite sure, but somewhere around 3 weeks from, so that was August. Right, but so that'll be around the end of August, you're thinking, Travis?
I think they'll start setting the bypass at the end of August. We have about a week left in phase 4, so you'll start seeing work on Balsam and China Lake in 2 weeks.
Sounds good. The bid, now this was a couple of days old, but the bid was going to go out this week for the next phase of Ward. Is that still a true statement?
They had a hiccup with FEMA system for FHWA. Have to wait till next Monday.
Roger, but that's moving forward and coming up quick, so I appreciate that. And work on Fairview, Felspar, from Dallas to Sanders is happening. Phase 2, Measure V.
Nobody can hear him.
I'm sorry, that my fault. I shouldn't have just been spewing that stuff out like that. So, no. This was my job to recount the meeting, and I shouldn't have to ask Travis for help, but I am. So phase 2,
So
Measure
you
V.
did had a valiant effort. So Ward is going to go out next week. We had a little trouble with the FEMA system for the RFA. We're waiting on FHWA to clear one little hiccup that happened in the reporting. As soon as we get that, we'll have an authorized E76. We'll put Ward 2 out to bid. It's going to be a 3-week bid, quick deal, so we can get Ward done this year. And then for phase 2 sewer, we are going to be starting August 7th again. They'll start seeing asphalt flying again. We're doing Fairview from Felspar to Drummond, and we are doing Reeves Street from Inyo to Mahan. So
That's what my notes meant. Thanks, Travis. Any questions on that?
Nope, thanks, Travis.
Nope. All right.
Next committee is quality of life. We met yesterday. I'm going to reiterate one more time. We certainly would love public participation in the quality of life meeting.
Or for that matter, committee participation. We didn't have a quorum.
Well, we had 2 of us, so we were okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, two's a quorum at the committee level because it's the 2 council members.
Sure.
But
if it's the council members.
if it's the 2 council members.
Didn't know.
But we had another great discussion about what we're working towards on Freedom Park. We spent a lot of time talking about the splash pad and the playground equipment and what we're looking forward to hopefully do at extending the splash pad and the playground for Freedom Park. We're going to continue to make sure that we get the budgetary numbers before we make any decision, before we make any recommendations to the council. We talked about our funding options, and we do have some options available to us. We also talked about some recent work that's trying to be done in regards to the drainage and some other things that have been discovered around the splash pad that need to get addressed. We found out we've got some heat issues with the pumps and how they're stored relative to when we hit our extreme summers and what it's doing to the equipment over time and addressing those needs. We spent a lot of time talking about, what type of equipment and what we're looking at for the inclusive park. And then finally, trying to think if there's anything else. We spent a lot, we talked about the ARPA projects and where we're at with them and what projects could be considered. And we spent some time talking about kind of what would be some potential options for the Kerr-McGee ball fields relative to artificial turf and lighting and what kind of where our priorities lie. That still needs to be shook out with some additional conversations with the organizations. And hopefully we'll have some additional conversations in the future about allocating the remaining ARPA that we have yet to make a decision on. Did I miss anything, Skip?
We, Eric and I try to make these quiet little committee meetings as entertaining as possible. We'll extend ourselves. Thank goodness Jessica was here. Other than that, if you listen, you could hear crickets. No, nothing else.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any other committees that have met for the month. Any other committees, boards, or commissions?
Yes, I had the Air Pollution Board, but nothing of substance came out of it.
Any others? Okay. City manager report?
Yes, sir. Just a reminder, we have our city org meeting tomorrow night at 5:30. One of the topics is going to be trash. We'll also be discussing when our next town hall meeting will be. Some good news that we got here recently that I think the council will be interested in hearing. Last year, when we were looking at our overall diversion rate for the city's trash, it was at 13%. Currently, after 6 months of the new program, we're at 33% diversion rate, so we've seen it almost triple.
That's good.
Which puts us in a little bit better position with Cal Recycle and not being out of compliance. So we're hoping that with additional information to the public, taking more time to review the program, and then making any potential adjustments that may need to be made. We are on the right track. As you know, the first 3 months was kind of a hiccup, so we're really looking at just the last 3 months, this increasing. And a lot of that, although Mr. Neal alluded to the fact there wasn't a whole lot of organics that was picked up, but it did encourage people to then divert their recycling, which is a significant amount. So this is putting us on the right track as a community where we should be. And I do believe I'm going to have Travis come up. I think he wanted to address one issue.
So I just thought it'd be of note, the IWV EDC reached out to City Manager Strand last year about the Parade of 1,000 Flags, and I know how important that is to all of us and our community for that matter. And partnering with them, we have developed a survey map, and we're able to accurately locate where they set their flags up, which is a very hard endeavor, as you all know, with how carefully and how spaced they all are. So Mr. O'Neill and I came up with a plan for what we are going to do and how we are going to put monuments in the park out there, so it makes it a lot easier for them. And I thought this might be a good time for you guys to get to see what we're gonna put in. Wow. So we've got about 11 of them we've got to put in. They're 3-inch brass discs, and they say the Parade of 1,000 Flags, Boundary Monument, and City of Ridgecrest, and they've got a triangle with a dot in the middle, so they can pull strings along the outside boundary and accurately mark and put their flags up hopefully in half the time.
Does that have any, is any of it impact the use of the field for like running and that sort of stuff?
It shouldn't. I'm gonna set the monuments down to where that way they'll be down lower, and most of them are on the perimeter and won't be out in the field where they should.
Yeah, I was just
occur.
thinking about it ahead of time.
And if there are some, we'll come up with a better way to keep them down, so that way they're not gonna impact people's running ability in the field.
Travis, since the camera zooms in on you when you talk, would you mind holding that? Here.
No, Travis, stay. He's coming your way, okay? You both can't come.
Yeah. That way people can see it on the camera.
Face it towards Eric.
Well, we could do, Travis, why don't we just
get it, Travis.
do an online post tomorrow?
We'll put a
with it?
post of it up there so people
Yeah,
can see it.
it's gonna be hard for them to see. It's shining. I can't even see it from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's glistening. You have to wait till it patina's a little bit.
Nope, he's
But
zooming in on it.
smile
Just hold
like
it still.
Beth Myers.
Hold it still. Look at Riley go.
Beautiful.
Good job, Riley.
Thumbs up from Riley.
Woo-woo.
Okay.
I do still have steady hands. No way. All right, thank you, guys. That was it.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Strand?
Yeah, my final thing. So just to understand, Placer AI is that I'll be putting it on the agenda for the next meeting for city council consideration and approval.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Future agenda items. We covered the elephant in the room for future agenda items. Is there any other future agenda items requested?
Non-requested, but just a reminder to the public that the final public hearing for the RTI bid will be on September 20th.
We've reiterated, I think we got it covered. Any other future agenda items?
No, we're good. Sorry.
No? Okay. Next is mayor and council comments. I'll go ahead and skip. I'll let you kick off.
It's almost 8:30.
Yep.
That'll be it.
That was probably one of the best comments I've ever heard. That was awesome.
Oh, I missed it. What did he say?
He said it's almost 8:30. That's it. It was a perfect comment. Doc?
I'm good, thanks.
Solomon?
It was a very spirited meeting. So people have different opinions, but as council, we have to hear to the public. So it's nice, everybody express their opinion, so they have their plus points and their minus points. So hopefully, we'll be able to come to a resolution amicably in the next meeting. Thank you, sir.
Yep. Okay.
So I will, to my own detriment, touch on Placer AI one more time. And that is that.
You're not going to be alone, so don't feel
No,
bad.
that's okay. I just wanted to touch on it real quick because I didn't say it earlier. I was trying to be respectful. And that is that, and I do mean this in the utmost respect, Scott, that I run into must be a totally different crowd of folks, maybe, especially people that, because I do work on base. I do interact with software engineers. I do interact with not only a younger demographic, but just a different demographic of folks. And what we saw here last night was an opinion of a group of people. I respect all opinions, and sometimes I even, I lean that way. I could see it. But when it comes to something like this, I can tell you that the average person that I discuss, or that's even just in my age demographic, they're wondering why we're talking about this so much, because they already fully understand the minute that they say, yep, sell this to third party, like they just get it because it was maybe more a part of their everyday life growing up with apps, seeing them developed. And I can tell you that when I dug into, because believe it or not, I dig deep, and Jessica, I told you this in an email, that when I first heard about Placer AI, I wanted to understand, just like you, Skip. So I dug into the software and what the coding looked like, and how did it even start? Because it had to start somewhere. And where it started was companies getting software coders to put stuff inside of apps. And eventually it became part of the market, and it was sellable information. And there's a lot of software coders that flat wouldn't do it. Some that would, and then it marketed and it sold. So what I was trying to say is there is a lot of the population that's they're kind of wondering, because they know. I mean, it's no different than, I'm not saying this is one opinion is if you don't know, maybe you shouldn't press the accept or press the download. Now that to you may be abrasive, and I don't mean it that way, because you are right. There is some certain amount of marketing and manipulation, because people when they were sold these cell phones, there wasn't a warning sign, right? Nobody handed them a booklet to say, don't do this, your rights could be violated. Don't do this because maybe you're not paying attention. And it was a slow, like on a philosophical level, it's a slow creep. And I'll say this, even in the average, in your average daily life, if you're not a lawyer, the amount of times that you either may or may not break the law, if you're not a police officer where you know the law, I mean, we cruise through our days not really paying attention to all the details we gloss over. That's something I just wanted to touch back on, and that's one of them. Especially, these cell phones are extremely dangerous. I have a VPN on my phone, just so everybody knows. Just to Google, I don't even use Google. I use something called DuckDuckGo because I realized that Google was shifting out the things that I was looking for. I just wanted to search for an image and I couldn't do that. I had to go to a wholly different browser to do that. And I know that because I've done my research and I look around and I do that analysis.
Google owns DuckDuckGo.
Sure, but DuckDuckGo doesn't filter it. And my point is just knowing and understanding. And the different demographics of the city of Ridgecrest that is changing so fast right now. At lightning speed, it's changing. And even to me, at my age, I'll go down and sit down at Flightline Tap Room to have a beer. And when I look around, I'm not recognizing most of the people that are sitting in there. The conversations they're having are not conversations I have with the people that I grew up with. That's all a good thing. It just is what it is. But that's all I really want. That's what I wanted to add earlier about Placer AI. If we were going to have a discussion, that's just info into the pot, so to speak, not really at you or to you. The rest of it is that I did appreciate the discussion. I think what we have is an issue that we've seen in Ridgecrest a lot, and we the city, just need to educate people and be transparent. And that's what we're doing. Matter of fact, the very first time that I brought it up, I knew people were probably not going to be happy that I brought it up. There was no reason for me to do it. I did it because I thought that it was important that the community had the discussion. I still think that it's important that we have it, and we have had ad nauseum. And if we're going to have one more, okay, so be it. But I think that we're doing a better job here on the city council and the city staff is for sure. Just communicating with the public, making sure if there's stuff that people don't understand. We live in the age of information. Let's get out as much as we can.
So I'll wrap up. Kyle, you hit a couple really important ones, but let's hit transparency. I mean, I've been an advocate for transparency, all the way up to the beginning of the casino way back in 2016. And, even throughout everything in this conversations, everything about what we've been doing is trying to be transparent. Kyle's absolutely right. It didn't have to come up. It could have been signed by the city manager, implemented, and done. We chose to engage a conversation. The community asked for the engagement of a conversation. We did it. Even today, Doc says, I want to have some more conversation. I'm not going to override his decision or his desire to make sure that he's crossed whatever T's and had a right to have his voice and his vote heard. I'm not going to do that. That's what's so odd about this conversation, and where I go with Mr. Blades is, I'm going to get a whole bunch of heat for saying this, but I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. Data exists out there everywhere. Whatever you're doing today, if you don't think you're being managed by some form of data, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. Yep. That's why I was trying to get it right. But I mean, the fact is that everything around us is data driven, whether you drive by and you happen to get a notification on your phone, or you drive by and you get this. And I get, if somebody doesn't want to have any participation, they don't want any of it, opt out of it. Opt out of all of it. Fine. Leave your cell phone at home. But to try and say, let's not move forward in using technology the way it's being designed, and we did absolutely take the time. This is where some of the comments tonight are very, very challenging for me, because I respect that somebody doesn't trust it. I respect that somebody doesn't agree with it. I respect that somebody doesn't want it. But I heard from about 9 people tonight that said that. I represent 30,000. I heard from 9. I heard on social media from many that agreed with my comments that I posted today. And I made my position very clear earlier today for just that reason. I'm not going to hide behind where I stand. Shovel, dig in with your hands. I want the shovel. I went to Universal Studios this last weekend. I have a torn meniscus, and I'm going to be out, by the way, for the council to be aware. I'm going to probably have surgery sometime in September. I'll make sure people know when that's happening and what's going on. But at the end of the day, let's be real clear, I went to Universal Studios and I rented a scooter. I didn't like being on a scooter. I hated feeling like that guy. I mean, I felt like the fat white dude on a scooter at the park. I hated it. But I did it because I'm not going to hurt myself further, because I'm going to use the technology to make sure that my life's easier and my kids' life is easier, and that I'm building the environment that they want. That's where this is so complex to me, is I respect somebody's opinion that they don't like something. But the argument, I don't like something, is not an argument. Okay? Especially when it surrounds you and it is part of what your world is. That's like saying, oh no, nothing's happening, I don't want to see it. Well, wake up, it's around you. And for some people, they want to be in blinders. I can't help that. And they'll be in blinders. But at the end of the day, it was a great discussion. I agree with you. Again, we'll have further discussion. I want to respect everyone's opportunity for transparency. And we'll probably hear from similar opinions again. I want to again reiterate and encourage, if somebody wants, we will have Waste Management here at City Org tomorrow night. We'll be asking them again about the performance and service issues that have been raised by the public. We'll be happy to bring them in for the discussion and set the town hall. I want to reiterate that we have the Night Off Balsam coming up on August 12th and the Parade of 1,000 Flags on September 9th. Those are 2 big events. I hope to see our community out. I really hope that 6 months from now, I have the opportunity to tell you statistically how many people were there, and that I can offer you some actual data on what occurred. But that will be left to be seen. And then finally, I mean, if my face didn't tell it, I'm going to go ahead and compliment City Manager Strand and Megan, you're gone, but 33% diversion, a 3 times increase in diversion, and everyone out there who says, we hate this trash thing, doesn't understand that just probably prevented us from a $10,000 a day fine by getting the diversion rate correct and getting it right. That is huge. I understand, hey, I got maggots, I got flies, I clean my trash can too, guys, come on. We all pull our pants up one leg at a time. I get it. I'm not immune to it any more than anybody else is. But the simple fact is that when you have a 13% diversion rate and you go to 33%, it's quite clear that our community wasn't embracing the use of recycling until we forced the use of recycling. And everyone goes, you used the word force. No, we implemented the best strategic plan for the community as a whole, not the 10 voices that hate everything that we seem to do. And I have an incredibly sarcastic sentence I want to say that I'm not going to say. But the simple fact is that I will refer to my good friend Nathan Ollie, who is the former CEO for the Chamber of Commerce and is now legislative director for Comcast, and one of my very, very dear friends who said, if you're hearing from only one side and it's this side, then you must be making the right decision if you're going the other direction. So with that, I wish everyone a wonderful evening. Have a great day, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.